Today's chapter talk covers building your confidence as a speaker. Two key learning objectives I will cover. Number one, recognize internal and external factors of communication apprehension. So essentially, where does that come from, that fear or the anxiety? And then the second objective, identify techniques to become more confident by managing communication apprehension. All right, let's do it. Our first objective, recognize internal and external factors. Let's talk about external factors of communication apprehension first. These things are external, meaning that you don't have direct control over them. The two external factors our text identifies is unfamiliar settings, as well as the importance of the occasion. So the unfamiliar, when we are put in an unfamiliar situation, our adrenaline instantly spikes. This, in my opinion, is because we don't have muscle memory. We don't have an experience to point it to and explain it. As human beings, we always want to make sense of things. And when we're put in a new situation, we don't have a script to go to. The second then is the importance of the occasion. With increased importance of the speaking event, typically comes increased fear or increased apprehension. So for example, if your final grade is resting on one speech that you will deliver at the end of semester, you have a lot of pressure on you to perform well. Maybe this is about job performance. Maybe you are pitching something, a new product, a new campaign that will ultimately make or break your career. These two external factors increase communication apprehension. So what do we do about it? My recommendation is to make the unfamiliar familiar. And we do this by practicing, but we can be even more specific. We need to build muscle memory, circumstances around this speech that become familiar. So for example, if you are able to practice your speech in the same space you will deliver it, that is huge because you're going to have nonverbal cues all around you. The outline you practice with, if you have highlights and it's color-coded and notes all over and you are doing well practicing with that outline, use that outline for your official performance. Even simple things as wearing the same outfit, styling your hair in the same way, the same accessories. The more you can recreate, you make the unfamiliar familiar. And of course, if you can practice, if you have classmates, if you can practice in front of them and then they're sitting in the audience, you have created familiarity. And you'll see the model of memory. Short term, okay, if we don't do anything with new situations, if we don't practice, the information is forgotten. If when you're preparing for a speech, you rehearse and you layer in those objects of familiarity, when you get to the stage or in front of the classroom, you have moved that information into long-term memory store. So when you get up there, it's going to be familiar and you're going to deliver an excellent speech. The second item we're looking at is internal factors. Okay, this is what's going on inside of you. This is the second part of the objective. Three things that often happen. We succumb to perfectionism, misconceptions about our audience, and self-sabotage. Let's tackle perfectionism first. Perfectionism is unrealistic and it is truly unnecessary. Perfectionists believe that they must at all costs perform perfectly in a speaking situation. Now, there's a lot of research out there that says the contrary. There is this term called the pratfall effect, which essentially means that your audience likes you or has more trust in your message if you are perceived as human. So to err is human, it's that whole concept. So if you flub up, if you overlook a word and then go back and say, whoops, I forgot to mention this. That's an example of the pratfall effect. You're highlighting that I'm not perfect, and the audience feels inherently closer to us because of it. For you theater folks out there, the show must go on. If you miss a point and then realize it, simply go back and state it. Let the audience know, oh, I neglected to mention this. Or if you drop your outline, pick it up. The listener is going to mirror your reaction to the mistakes. So if you continue to speak with confidence and write it out, as will they. But if you become flustered and insecure, that will in turn make your audience feel flustered and insecure. Okay, so perfectionism, it has no place in public speaking. We are all human. Secondly, misconceptions about your audience. This is the this is the perception of the quote, illusion of transparency. And what this is, it is a false, I repeat that, false belief that people know what you're thinking or feeling. Now, this leans into the old fake it till you make it. Your audience does not know what you're feeling. If you are self-sabotaging, if you are reinforcing negative thoughts, your audience doesn't know that. So don't give that life. Your audience does not want you to fail. They are not inside your head. They are not seeing your thoughts or your feelings. So you have this beautiful guard in front of you to present what you want to the listener. And then lastly, we have self-sabotage. Oh boy, okay, please don't self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is where you focus so much on the anxiety that thinking about the speech is almost worse than delivering it. Self-sabotage is truly a self-fulfilling prophecy, meaning if you think you will fail, you likely will. You'll see the diagram in the upper right. Okay, you have a self-sabotaging thought. I'm going to bomb this speech. That increases fear and anxiety. Therefore, you avoid practicing, rehearsing the one thing that can help you overcome that and build muscle memory. And then when you deliver that speech, knowing you are unprepared, you likely will bomb. And then we repeat the cycle. Okay, so no self-sabotage. And I'm going to give you the antidote to that here in a minute. Remember, you are your own worst enemy. So knowing that, become your greatest ally, your greatest positive reinforcer. So let's jump to objective 2. Let's get a little more sunny up in here. Identify techniques to become more confident by managing communication apprehension. The first item our text covers is the communication orientation. Okay, so if I am at the grocery store, here I am in my lovely square blouse in a shade of golden, and I see somebody and I say, "Oh, hey, Jim." And Jim does not look up. He continues to focus on his shopping. This is no different than us speaking to the audience and not recognizing them, not seeing them. How I felt at the market when I bumped into Jim and was disregarded or ignored is how your audience feels if we don't bring them into the speech. So the theory is a communication orientation. Instead of making it I, about me, we make it about we and us, the audience. When we make it less about ourselves and more about them, we are able to engage the listener. And when we engage, your audience is going to feel part of the message. They're going to respond to a question. They're going to provide interaction. They're going to give you that positive feedback and reinforcement as you are speaking. So communication orientation. Remember, communication is a dynamic process. It has a sender and a receiver. And public speaking is really just an extension of that. So please don't be a Jim. The second item under our second objective is cognitive restructuring. This you may have heard of as cognitive behavioral restructuring or just cognitive restructuring. Same concept. Now, I have a son with autism, and we have spent lots of money and time working with counselors to walk us through this. So I will try to give you this in brief, but I'm speaking from a place of knowing this can and does work if you use it. Essentially, this theory is our thoughts have a 1-to-1 ratio. So for every negative thought we put in our head, we have to have at least one positive thought to counteract it. So cognitive restructuring is 4 simple steps. Recognize your negative thought. Okay, what did I just say to myself? Number 2, consider if the fear is even rational. Number 3, develop positive coping statements. And 4, incorporate your positive coping statement into your life. So let's use a public speaking scenario. Maybe you are telling yourself, I am going to embarrass myself so bad. Oh my goodness, this is going to be so embarrassing. Okay, step 1 is to identify that thought. I'm thinking that I'll embarrass myself. Step 2 then is to consider if this is even rational. Well, my consideration would be, okay, I have been practicing for hours. I am prepared. How bad could I really embarrass myself? And even if I were to fall to the ground, this is not life or death. This is an online public speaking class, or this is one class in the history of my life. The third step then, develop a positive coping statement. In this scenario of I'll embarrass myself, that might be, you know what, I'm prepared, I'm ready, I got this. And then incorporate that statement into your life. So every time you deliver that speech, or excuse me, you practice for the delivery, you tell yourself, I got this, I've practiced, I'm ready. Another example might be, okay, my mind is going to go blank. I know it's going to go blank. This is very self-sabotaging. So first we recognize that thought. Then we consider if it's rational. Step 2 would be, you know, I have an outline in front of me and I've practiced. So if my mind goes blank, I have a way to help myself out. Step 3, then develop a positive coping statement. Step 3 would be, okay, if I lose my place, I'll bounce back. I got this. And then step 4, to incorporate that statement into your life. Either way, I'm prepared. I'm going to rock this. I got this. Okay, cognitive restructuring. The next item under Objective 2 are 3 additional techniques you can use to overcome communication apprehension. Now, I tell you folks these things can and do work. I speak for a living, and there is not a large event that I don't have communication apprehension about. And that's not a bad thing. Some level of communication apprehension means we care. Our body spikes with adrenaline, just as an athlete does going into a game, or a musician going into a concert. You have that spike of adrenaline. What we need to do is use it to our benefit. So how do we channel that? The first one is visualization. Picture yourself delivering that speech with confidence. Envision the audience nodding, smiling, laughing, engagement. Power pose. Amy Cuddy authored the book Presence, and she has coined the power pose. And you can see that these are high power poses. Standing with your legs slightly spread, shoulders back, arms in the air, arms on hips. These things all are said to reduce cortisol, that stress hormone. Okay? Visualization and body stance. Visualize yourself. Practice with this power pose. Second item, deep breathing. Now, ever since we're young, our mother probably told us, take a deep breath. And I tell my kids this all the time. Well, it turns out there is some real science behind that. When we breathe deeply, we activate something called the vagus nerve, which is control of the parasympathetic nervous system. When we activate that parasympathetic nervous system, we reduce our heart rate, we lower our blood pressure, we regulate our breathing, our pupils no longer dilate. There is science to it. Technique, you want to breathe in slowly. You can see in the diagram here, 4 counts, and then hold it. If you can't hold it a 7 count, hold it at least 4. So you breathe in for 4, hold for at least 4, and then a slow exhale. Now, you may just think you're simply breathing, but you are indeed activating that parasympathetic nervous system, which controls your vagus nerve, which is the fight or flight, which reduces stress, decreases cortisol. And the third and final item, folks, this will come as no surprise to you. Practice, practice, practice. I said it at the beginning of this chapter talk, muscle memory. Every time we practice, we are taking the reps. We are building muscle memory. We are moving this presentation into long-term storage. You will succeed if you practice. I promise you that. So with that said, we just covered 2 simple objectives. Recognize internal and external factors of communication apprehension. Again, what's going on outside and what's going on inside of us. And then lastly, identify techniques to become more confident by managing communication apprehension. Thank you.